Hello and welcome to Gin with Gwyn. This is where I give you my off-the-cuff and unrehearsed thoughts on marketing data and philosophy. Gin with Gwyn, it's available on LinkedIn, 2 p.m. Sunday. Abandon your family. They don't love you like I love you. Stop what you're doing in your free time and read my business-focused blog. With that being said, this week's theme is the line between personal and creepy. Data has meant that personalization at scale is more real than it's ever been before, and it's more available to small-sized companies, where in the past, I would say the majority of us couldn't really get that far. We had some good segmentation on lists, but above and beyond that, not much. And I'm sure we've all felt the sort of unease when somebody sent us something that's just a little bit too personalized and felt uneasy about it. Now, the weird thing is that whenever anyone talks about personalization, there's always all these stats that McKinsey finds that 71% of consumers expect companies to deliver personalized interactions, 76% get frustrated if they do not. When brands get it right, 78% say that personalized communications make them more likely to purchase. But then on the opposite end of that spectrum, there's always an equal number of people who say they do not trust brands with their data. 68% don't trust brands with their data. They don't think they have their best interests at heart, and they don't want to give you any information. And as long as both of those things work together, we'll all be happy. But they don't. And so how can you send communications that do not cross the creepy line? Number one, start with what the consumer or the customer told you directly. The safest tier of personalization, especially if you're building up from sort of nowhere, is to use the information that the customer already gave you sort of deliberately or would obviously expect you to remember. So this is things like their name, their plan, maybe a recent purchase, their loyalty status, a preference that they selected, an answer to a survey that they have filled in. Referencing those things normally reads as sort of attentive, and a good member of staff in like a small personal business could plausibly have remembered them too. And there's a useful distinction here in having permission to hold a piece of data and the customer expecting you to use it in a particular context. So before turning a CRM field into a customer-facing copy, you should probably ask yourself like a free question, which is, where did that information come from? Because some of you know who you are, naughty people going and getting random information about people, like, oh, we should go get all their credit information, and oh, we definitely need to know this information that someone will buy me. You know who you are. Number two, would the customer remember giving it to us? Because if you're buying information from other people, which is not necessarily kosher, the answer would be no. And three, would they reasonably expect us to use it here? If the answers to those three questions are obvious, then probably you're in safe territory. If you're not personalizing much yet, this basic tier, names, plans, what did they already tell you? That's good. You don't need behavioral models. You don't need event streams to make your CRM feel a little bit more relevant than it is today. Step two, move to behavioral summaries, but not raw events. So an example of this would be like, it's been a while since we've seen you is a lovely summary of an action, whereas you've not logged in 11 days, having previously visited on average 36 hours. It's the same thing, right? But it's stripped of warmth and it feels robotic and a little bit creepy. A status or pattern can read like as care. An exact count or date stamp reads as surveillance, even though they're technically the same. And that's an important rule here. The information that decides which message somebody receives does not necessarily need to appear in the message itself. So your CRM might know that somebody visited the same product page 6 times this week. Pardon me. That's an excellent signal for like, what do they want? What context? What category are they filling into? That's great. But it doesn't mean that your email should say, we have noticed that you visited this page 6 times. So use the observation to improve the experience. Surface the observation only when doing something adds something useful to the customer. I have another stat. So Twilio says that 88% of customers are more likely to buy when engagement is personalized in real time, yet 61% do not believe that brands use their data to the best intent. Number 3, test the reaction before you go further. So don't ask LinkedIn, what do you think is too creepy and what is too far? Because everybody has their own personal line. You can measure that. So once you have some personalization going out, start recording the intensity of each campaign alongside its performance. So you don't need like a sophisticated model here. A simple framework is enough. So maybe you could have 6 tiers. So tier 1 is like generic segment campaign level messaging, no individual personalization. The next tier up from that is names, plans, preferences, other information that you've already acquired, what we talked about before. Above that, relationships, so purchases, account tenure, loyalty status, previous interactions. Above that, behavioral states such as engaged, drifting, high intent, at risk maybe at that stage. Above that, more granular, specific recent behaviors, individual product views, interaction counts, or precise timing. Again, we're not surfacing them directly in the message, but we can use those things to personalize our messages. And then probably at the top of the personalization and creepy factor, so that inferred or maybe even sensitive, so attributes or predictions that the customer did not explicitly provide, and you may not realize that you've inferred. So what you do is you tag campaigns with these different tierings, and then you compare the reaction. So obviously you want to start with what's important, which is the unsubscribe rate and the spam complaint rate. Add negative reply sentiment where customers can reply, then compare those against a positive outcome. So what you were trying to achieve: conversion, retention, reactivation, revenue, and engagement. And you might discover that your audience is perfectly comfortable with behavioral segmentation, but reacts badly when those behaviors are more explicitly mentioned. So there might be one audience that really doesn't like personalization, and another one, they tolerate it a lot more because they have a different relationship with you and your product. So that's a lot more useful than applying blanket rules to everybody and deciding this is what counts as creepy. Don't just ask whether deeper personalization performs better. Ask whether the incremental performance is worth the incremental discomfort, because when you lose people, it's very difficult to get them back, and it costs money. Next, the more personal the data that you're using, the more useful the outcome should be. This is another way of thinking about it. So using purchase history to remind somebody that a product they regularly buy might need replacing, that's kind of an obvious value exchange to me. But you could use that same browsing history simply to tell them that you've noticed that what they've been looking at, it's harder to justify. It's harder to say that that's useful to the end customer, and it's not just your benefit of trying to sell them something. And so before using these sort of deeper personalization signals, ask what a customer actually gets because you use that. Is it better timing? Is it fewer irrelevant communications? Is it actually a useful reminder? Is it a more appropriate offer, which is a little bit blurry to me? Avoid a message that they shouldn't have received. Maybe that would be a good use case of personalization. And is it fast to help with something that they appear to be struggling with? In the case that you have like a product and you can see that they're really using this product, but they don't seem to be sticking with it, that's a great use case there. If your only thought of including personalization is we think it might increase click-through rate, that's a benefit for you. It's not a benefit for them. Build the guardrails into your data. So all of this is going to become harder once personalization scales beyond what one person can review message by message. And so we're going towards an agentic future where copy is being written for you, and next best action for each individual customer is decided by a black box. And so you want to build a boundary into the data layer itself. Create a personalization eligibility classification. So between the raw customer data and anything that is going to generate customer facing copy. And it can be quite simple. It's sort of what's surfaceable, so name, plan, purchase history, stated preferences, and other information that can normally appear in there. What's surfaceable with context, so account tenure, loyalty status, previous interactions where appropriateness depends on the message. What should you only use for targeting? So this could be engagement scores, churn propensities, behavioral segments. browsing intensity, other similar derived signals. If an AI system should never expose a particular field, do not rely solely on the prompt telling it not to. Wherever practical, remove that field from the customer-facing generation layer entirely. Just get rid of that potentially happening. And of course, last but not least, it's probably restricted as well. So what are the sensitive attributes that nobody should ever be using? What's the highly granular tracking and sort of inferred vulnerabilities that you should not available to the normal person? That means like the underlying data is still still has a job to do, but it's not being used in messaging. So like a churn model can still use behavior, a recommendation system can still learn from browsing, an orchestration layer can still decide that somebody should receive one journey rather than another, but the copywriter, the AI copywriter, cannot casually reach into those signals and then turn them into a sentence. That's what you're trying to avoid through guardrails. What data should you be watching throughout? Personalization kind of needs its own safety metrics alongside performance metrics. So as I said before, track unsubscribe rates, spam complaint rates by personalization tier, particularly when you introduce new deeper tiers where customers can reply, monitor the sentiment there and complaint themes. If you get a handful of messages saying, how did you know that? Why are you telling me this? It might be something that an aggregate campaign dashboard will take a lot longer to come to surface. So try and get those replies into some sort of field where you can track them and then look at the sentiment over time. Track the positive outcome by tier as well. So conversion, retention, reactivation, all the things that we talked about. But look at the two sides together. If moving from like tier 2 to tier 3 of personalization produces a more meaningful improvement in relevance with no deterioration in customer signals, that's useful evidence. But if moving from tier 3 to 4 produces a tiny conversion increase alongside a like big rise in complaints and unsubscribes, you've learned something very valuable. And probably all of this thing needs a smaller audience to test out to. Don't just blanket send something out and hope for the best. So none of this is a reason to personalize less. The commercial argument for useful personalization is very strong, but customer expectations around data are moving at the same time. Salesforce reports that 71% of customers are increasingly protective of their personal information, and those two trends are not contradictory. Customers want their businesses to understand them, but they do not want them constantly reminding them of how much they have been observed in order to achieve that understanding. So build personalization depth gradually. Start with information that they give you and use surveys, use giveaways, use light touches to enhance your understanding of this and build a better picture over time. Think in terms of years and not in terms of when can I sell them something, they're on my list, they need to buy something, otherwise all of this is not worth it. The goal is not to discover the maximum amount of personalization your customers will tolerate. And this has been my thoughts on the line between personalization and being a bit creepy. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and thanks for watching another Jim McKinsey.